Mutant Chronicles are stories that I'll make up on the spot using words that mutate into other words by adding or subtracting a letter or by replacing pairs of letters with each other. So rather than trying to explain that in detail, exactly how that works, let's just jump right in and you can see for yourself how the words mutate. Let me get a good word to start with. Okay, shoes. Joe needed a new pair of shoes. He always seemed to need a new pair of shoes. Not quite sure why his shoes wore out so fast all the time. Maybe it was because he was always working in the yard in his shoes, using the hose to turn the dirt over and always getting his shoes dirty. And then there were times when he would be digging holes, and of course he's out in the dirt in the holes with his shoes too. So yeah, Joe needed some new shoes. By the way, sometimes when he was digging holes, he would come across moles. Usually when he was just starting the hole, because they don't dig that deep, I don't think. And they didn't really necessarily have anything to do with the shoes. But yeah, he needed some shoes. So he went to the shoe store, and the first thing he did was he would look at the soles. Most people, they look at the overall look of the shoe, the part that you can actually see. But Joe, to him, the sole was important because that was what was going to be. He was going to be standing on it in the holes and using the hose and stomping on moles. Maybe, I don't know whether he did that or not. But yeah, the soles were important. They needed to be tough. If the soles weren't good, if they allowed the stuff under his foot to affect him too much, then he could end up with sores on his feet, which obviously would not be good. And then next he would look at the material that the top of the shoe was made of, because it needed to be able to keep out spores. If it was a mesh, not so good. Otherwise he might get mold spores in there. They'd get in his socks and on his feet, and I don't know why Joe didn't wash his feet more often, so that didn't really matter, but, well, apparently he didn't. Now, after that, only after those considerations, Joe would consider how well those shoes would work for playing sports. Of course he did that. Sometimes, not often, usually just kind of in spurts, but, sometimes he did play sports. Sometimes the sports were, he would do horse riding, which of course got him back out into the dirt again, and then, the shoes would have to be able to accommodate spurs. These were the kinds of considerations that would spur Joe to pick one particular shoe over another. So on this particular day, Joe, he picked out some shoes, bought them, went home, and it was about time to go out and work in the yard, and so he poured himself a glass of milk and started to drink it, but oh man, the milk had gone sour. Why had the milk gone sour? It had been sitting in the fridge. He looked at the expiration date, and oh, sure enough, this milk was 4 weeks past expiration. How did that happen? Boy, that smelled foul. And so, apparently, Joe had partially drunk this milk, and then he had pushed it back behind the new milk that he bought when he stuck it into the fridge, and he had drunk all the new milk, and maybe had done that a couple times and never finished this particular gallon. And so it had gone bad. Man, he had been a fool not to make sure that he had pulled that oldest gallon of milk to the front each time. So, now my mind goes blank in the middle of making up our story here. He dumped out that milk, and he got another gallon out and poured himself another cool glass of milk and drank that. tasted pretty good. And he cooked himself up some lunch. Needed to have his strength up before going out and working in the yard. And and then he took a look out the window to see, what he wanted to work on today. And as he looked out the window, he saw his friend Sam coming. Now the funny thing was, his friend Sam, even though he was a friend, he wasn't coming up the sidewalk. He was sneaking around into the garage. What was he going to do? Loot the garage? So I mean, I don't know whether he was actually going to loot the garage or not, but he was kind of a loon. So sometimes he would just do weird things like go into the garage instead of coming up to the house. Never really know what was on Sam's mind. Yeah, Sam's a friend. Joe is the guy we're talking about. All right. Now, what suddenly occurred to Joe when he saw Sam going to the garage was that he needed to get out there quick and stop him before he went into the garage, because there happened to be a lion in the garage on this particular day. Seems kind of weird, but why would he have a lion in the garage? Well, what it was there was a traveling circus that had gone through, and they had some lions, and one of the lions was sick and needed somebody to take care of it for a little while, and for some reason or other, Joe got the job, and so he was taking care of the lion in his garage. Let's see. So Joe goes running out to stop Sam from going into the garage and getting eaten by the lion, and he stops him just in time, just as he starts opening the door, and he slams it shut and tells him, hey, you can't go in there. There's a lion in there. The people from the traveling circus have me taking care of it. They're going to come back and pick it up, in a day or two, now that he's feeling healthy again. And Sam was like, are you guys a bunch of loons? What are you doing keeping a lion in a garage? That's crazy. And Joe said, well, I know it's a little bit crazy, but hey, I've got some loans to pay off, and they were going to pay me for that. I figured, hey, I'll do the work. I can handle it. I can keep the garage closed, throw some meat in for the lion every once in a while. Get those loans paid off. Sam was just having none of this. It's like, dude, somebody needs to loan you a brain if you're keeping a lion in your garage. And again, we draw a blank on this. So let's see if we can. Well, one of the things about doing Mutant Chronicles like this, is that we try to keep the story going as long as possible before running out of words. And so I guess I've got to keep doing that. He says, okay, you're crazy. Somebody needs to loan you a brain, and so Sam kind of Joe let out a little moan and said, oh man, I know it's kind of crazy, but I gotta get this stuff paid off, and I'm always spending all my money on shoes, so I don't have enough money, and I need the income. And so Sam said, okay, I understand, it's crazy, but I understand. I understand where you're coming from. You need to make money somehow, and I'm looking out at your garden there, and there's only one bean growing in it. It's not like you're ever going to make money selling beans, and probably better take care of a lion that's been accustomed to being in captivity than raising bears or something like that. And Joe said, yeah, I mean, I wouldn't take care of bears. That's crazy. Um, bears are one of my greatest fears. Um, Although, I mean, it would be one of my greatest feats if I were to actually, overcome that fear and take care of a bear for a long time. Um, but, the problem is I'm not quite sure what a bear eats. Does it eat, do they eat berries or do they just eat meat? Um, and Sam said, well, yeah, I think they mostly like eating meats. Um, uh, so anyway, Joe says, yeah, well, I mean, this is all just academic because I mean, every time I think of a bear, or see a picture of one, my heart just melts because those things they just terrify me. Although one thing that I do think is really kind of cool looking is bear pelts. Um, if I had a bear pelt rug in my house, that would be pretty cool. Um, and Sam said, bear pelt. I'd rather have a felt rug. Um, and Sam said, well, I mean, felt rugs, sure, nice and all, but once when I was a kid, I fell down on a felt rug, and so I don't really like those either. They scare me almost as much as bears. Um, and Sam said, yeah, I know how you feel. I've fallen down before and become mortally afraid of something that had something to do with it. Like there was one time when I stepped on a Lego with my heel, and it hurt so bad that I ended up on the ground, and now I hate and I'm terrified of Legos now. Um, it took a while for that heel to heal. Um, and by the way, I also hit my head. It's a good thing I'm not dead from that. Although, when I hit my head, I hit it on the side, and so now, that's why I'm deaf in one ear. Uh, Joe said, "Oh, I never knew that was why you were deaf in one ear. That's an interesting story." Um, so, anyways, they're thinking about this lion that's sitting in the garage, and Sam is saying, "Well, I wanted to get into the garage because I needed to get my hedge trimmers that I loaned to you that I think are in there, and so Joe says, well, I mean, there's a lion in there, but so it's kind of dangerous to get in, but I'll make you a deal. Um, if you will feed the lion his next meal, then while he's eating his meal, then I will sneak in real carefully um, from the rear so that he doesn't see me, and um, just and I'll try to grab it. But if you hear him roar, be ready to let me out the door, because believe me, I'm going to soar out of there as fast as possible, and then slam the door behind and make sure that it locks and keep that lion in. So they started to do that, and Joe started. So Sam got the food and he threw it in, and the lion started eating it, and um, and Joe starts sneaking in, and all of a sudden he grabs the hedge trimmers, and the lion hears the sound of that, and he turns around and he goes after Joe and slashes the back of his leg just as he gets out the door, and they slam the door and everything, and um, Joe's looking at his leg there. It's got it's got this gash in it that's bleeding, and he says, "Man, that's going to leave a scar." And and Sam says to him, "Well, forget about the scar. I mean, yeah, you're gonna sure there's gonna be a scar, but big deal. I mean, it's the scare that's gonna last forever in both of us. Um, Never gonna be able to look at a lion again without being terrified, without my heart melting." Um, so. Uh, I said, well, I mean, I guess if you're going to have a terrifying experience like this, at least it's best if you can share it with a friend, right? Um, that way, when we shake at the sight of a lion, at least we can be shaken together. Um, and, at least we won't have to bear the shame of being terrified of lions alone. Um, so, they got the hedge trimmers and they went out to a tree and they sat in the shade of the tree and um, they were thinking and just decided to sit there and calm down a little bit and they decided, hey, we should really dig a hole here and plant some of those whatever those things in the garden are that keep getting burned by the sun, um, because hey, this is a nice shady place. Um, and so they said, okay, yeah, let's dig. And then they looked around and they said, oh no, I think the spade is in the garage with the lion.